In the lee of the storm, Parliament began the day in a hushed state, with just the sound of restless backbenchers breaking the silence.
Could be an exciting day.
Is there something going on? I don't know.
Is there a...
Tell me.
Would you like to see Angus Taylor take over?
That's not on yet.
Sussan Ley's supporters challenging her detractors to put up or shut up.
So I think if people want to achieve a particular outcome, they should have the guts to put their name to it.
Enough is enough of the ongoing chatter on leadership. If you want to call a spill, put your name to it and call it.
We shall move to questions without notice.
Even without Angus Taylor making any overt moves today, the government rushed to define him as a blue blood.
At every stage of his life, he wants everything handed to him on a silver platter, Mr Speaker. And he reminds me of a famous saying, Mr Speaker. The member for Hume was born with a silver foot in his mouth, Mr Speaker.
Like a Northern Territory wet season build-up, Parliament House has been on tenterhooks all day, waiting for Angus Taylor to decide. After all, cutting down a Liberal leader comes with its own conventions and precedents. One of them is the need to spell out the reasons why a coup is needed. Past triggers have included a plunge in polling.
We have lost 30 news polls in a row. It is clear that the people have made up their mind about Mr Abbott's leadership.
Or the loss of support among factional power brokers.
We've made a judgment that, in our view, there is majority support in the party room for change.
The history of Liberal leadership spills is one of inevitable discord among key players. While there are winners, there are also those who miss out and make life difficult for the new leader. Sussan Ley still has support among moderate Liberals, and those unconvinced Angus Taylor has the answers.
I think she's done a very good job in very bad circumstances, in really difficult situation where she hasn't had at least half of the party room openly supporting her. And we've also had the media who, from my perspective, looked like they were hell-bent on undermining her as well.
For the second time in less than a month, the coalition has stolen headlines during times of significance for the Jewish community. Today, it was leadership speculation during the visit of Israel's President Isaac Herzog to Canberra. With protesters outside, the number of attendees in the public gallery for question time was conspicuously low.
Say it loud, say it clear!
Sources tell 7:30 the numbers between Angus Taylor and Sussan Ley are tight and that support for her has held firm. Hence Angus Taylor's apparent hesitation this afternoon.
It'd be lying for me to say that I'm not supportive of change, but I am very keen that that change be much broader than just changing the salesperson at the front. We do need to have, like I say, a clear policy position that resonates with the Australian community.
For both Ley and any potential leader, the overwhelming challenge is to keep the Liberals from political extinction.
I do think there needs to be a bigger renewal. I think there's some good talented people in our party room who could exercise some more responsibility, could fulfil that role well. And importantly, I'm very conscious that we have, as a political movement, a demographic challenge of sorts in terms of, connecting with voters basically 55 and under. And so we do need people in positions of power who are 55 and under to help communicate to those people.
Just before we went to air tonight, Angus Taylor made this announcement.
The situation right now is devastating for Australians, and for that reason, we need to urgently restore confidence in the Liberal Party. That means we need strong leadership, clear direction, and a relentless and courageous focus on our values. As a first priority, we need to protect Australians' way of life. We need to focus on restoring their standard of living. I don't believe Sussan Ley is in a position to be able to lead the party as it needs to be led from here.
Liberal frontbencher Tim Wilson joins me now. Tim Wilson, welcome to 7:30.
Thank you for having me.
Angus Taylor has resigned. Is there a spill on?
Well, I've only heard the news as you have that he has resigned. I have not heard the second part of that, so I can't confirm that. That's ultimately a matter for him. No doubt he'll be talking to colleagues over the coming days about how he sees the future, and I look forward to receiving his call.
And when you receive that call, will you be backing Angus Taylor for leader of the Liberal Party?
Well, I've said consistently I support and back the leader. I've done that in every ballot in the previous context, unless it's an open context where you get a sort of a genuine choice. Because to me, it doesn't really matter who sits in the swivel chair. What matters is who's going to put forward a compelling vision for the future of the country that maps out where we need to go.
Let me just jump in there, Tim Wilson. There is no moment in politics where it doesn't matter who sits in the swivel chair. It matters. So does that mean that you will continue to support Sussan Ley if this indeed turns into the spill that we expect?
I've already said that I'll be supporting the leader, but it does matter to the extent of what they're going to do with the role. I have said consistently that I expect leadership, and I expect leadership to drive a vision for the future of the country. I expect leadership to define who we are as a political movement, and most importantly, who it is we're fighting for, to make sure that Australians aren't just thinking about us at the ballot box. They actively want to put us in government because we have the program that will deliver for them.
But you anticipate that a spill will unfold over the course of the next few hours, but you think that it will go into next day, that we'll still be having this conversation tomorrow?
Well, these are questions for the people who want to bring on a spill. They're not questions for me. I can speculate all you'd like. I'm interested in talking about the problems we have in CFMEU corruption, where $15 billion of Victorian taxpayers' money has gone into organised crime and criminal gangs. And I think that's actually something more concerning to the Australian people right now.
Well, let's just understand this. Have you heard from Angus Taylor yourself today, or from any of his close supporters?
Well, I saw him in question time, so I can't say that I didn't have a chat to him briefly there. But there has been no proposition of my vote, and we have not had a conversation along those lines today.
But you anticipate if a vote is called on, you will continue to support Sussan Ley for the leadership?
Well, as I've said, if you want loyalty, you have to show loyalty. And I believe in loyalty very much as a foundation for trust. And off the back of that, I will then be going on, of course, as processes go on, to make sure that I'm making the decision in the best interest of the Liberal Party. But I've said that, I always support the leader.
So just to be clear, you are ruling out the possibility of supporting Angus Taylor, just to be absolutely clear for our viewers.
Well, I think we need to be clear. There's two parts to any process like this. There's whether there's a vote to spill the leadership, and then there's a vote about the way forward. And so I don't know, firstly, what the first one's going to happen, let alone the second one. My key focus is making sure that whoever is leading the party they're putting the best case forward about how we're going to advance in Australia that improves the living standards of Australians, where we have a pathway and a program that focuses on a respect for all Australians, where hard work pays off, and most importantly, that Australians control their lives.
How would you describe the mood amongst your colleagues this evening?
Well, the last meeting I was in was spirited, because people were enthusiastic about us holding Labor to account for their connection to the CFMEU.
Yeah, but Tim Wilson, clearly you're not in a position to do that while the party is riven at this moment. You've got a significant member of the front bench who's just resigned. We expect a spill to come. So take us to the truth of that question. What is the atmosphere like amongst your colleagues this evening?
Well, I just need to be crystal clear. I was absolutely answering that question, because that absolutely was the mood in the last meeting I was in. Since I have come up to your studio, these events have unfolded. Before that, most people were just scratching their heads saying, what on earth is going on? Because no one's clear about whether there was going to be resignations. We've been reading about them all day. But actually, the last meeting I was in, the last conversations I was having, were people saying it's great to see us on the offensive. It's great to see us holding the CFMEU and the Labor Party's connection to it to account, because when you have $15 billion of taxpayers' money going to criminal gangs and organised crime, that is a very serious issue that goes to the heart of the corrupt nature of the Labor Party.
Let me just go to some of the comments that Angus Taylor made in that brief statement he made when he was announcing his resignation. He said that Sussan Ley is not in a position to lead the Liberal Party, to address the kinds of issues that you're concerned about. Could I get you to address that? He says she's not in a position to lead the Liberal Party. What do you say?
Well, they're his words. We have been prosecuting that today under his leadership. But I've said consistently and publicly that we need to do better. We need to be in a position where we animate and spirit Australians to want to fight for change in government, where they see a sense of vision and purpose about who we are, and is built on having respect for all Australians, making sure hard work pays off, and most importantly, Australians control their lives. Because off that, we get an agenda that's squarely focused on Australians, where they can advance their interests, and most importantly, we can build a better nation.
Can you do any of those things when you have a party that is clearly riven? You've got a senior member of the front bench who just a few moments ago described the current situation for the Liberal Party as devastating. Can you take a single step forward until this situation is resolved?
Resolutely, you can if you have the vision and the energy to pursue it. Australians need to see us fighting for them, not fighting each other.
So it's your view that Sussan Ley has that energy?
Well, I've seen her consistently show a steely resolve despite National Party separations, terrorist attacks, an unrelenting assault by Anthony Albanese and his bully boys on the front bench who have tried at every point to knock her about, and she has maintained a steely resolve. And I think that's very clear to the public. Does that mean that our poll numbers have got great? They're not. So
they're not just
focus,
not great. They are frankly terrible, aren't they, Tim Wilson?
Yes, they are. There's no point pretending otherwise. Australians want us to do better. They look at this building and they look at this parliament, and they want to see things that are actually going to advance their interests. There's harsh judgment on the political class. I think it's justified. The key thing is, are we then going to build out the alternative pathway where we have respect for Australians, we have a situation where hard work pays off, and most importantly, Australians feel in control of their lives and our destiny?
What is your assessment of where the numbers are in the party tonight? Obviously, the first vote for the leadership was very close. As things stand this evening, where do you think the numbers fall?
Honestly, I don't know. I haven't got a spreadsheet. I've been focusing on CFMEU corruption. I've been focusing on making sure that when $15 billion of taxpayers' money floods out of the Treasury coffers into organised crime and criminal gangs, that there's accountability for that. Instead, what we saw was obfuscation from the Minister in Parliament today, and not wanting to answer why it was that this is being whitewashed.
Now, you've watched the polls take their plunge from bad to worse during the year. Did you think that this moment was inevitable, seeing what happened, particularly in the most recent news poll, where we're looking at a number for the Liberal Party not seen for decades, a support of 15% for your party? Did you accept that the writing was on the wall at that point?
I accept that, when you get bad polls, people question direction. Fair enough too. I've said consistently, I want leadership. I want clarity, and I want Australians to look at us and believe that we are the way forward and there's a case for a change of government. The polls clearly don't reflect that. Let's be honest about it. But it comes down to whether you've then got a program to fix it, to build out a pathway where we have a respectful Australia, where people feel hard work pays off, and most importantly, they feel in control of their lives to build a better nation.
All right, just to finish, Tim Wilson, what will you do when you leave this studio? What are you going to do now?
Well, my phone's been going crazy with SMSs, so I'll probably check them then, but then I'll go and have a chat to my staff.
What's the most recent message you've got on your phone there?
Well, I'm not going to read that out on national television.
But just have a look and tell us who it was from.
It's to do with Senate estimates, because in Senate estimates, Senator Maria Kovacic is doing an amazing job holding CFMEU corruption to account and making sure there's a proper focus from my colleagues on how we confront the corruption that sits at the heart of the CFMEU Labor cartel.
It's a serious question, but that was indeed a valiant answer. Tim Wilson, thank you for joining us.
It was also a truthful one.
Thank you. Now, we're going to speak to 730's political editor, Jacob Greber. Obviously, Jacob, we've been waiting for this through a long and painful day. Can you explain what we're looking at here? I think we expected Angus Taylor to resign and for a spill to be more or less contained within the same sentence. So can you tell us what exactly is going on?
It certainly felt like a Beckett play all day today, didn't it? Waiting for Godot. He did appear not far from where I'm standing here. He critically, Sarah, did resign, but he did not expressly call for a spill. And that's very, very important. He did lay out the argument for why there should be one. He went through the polls. It's the worst for the Liberal Party since the 1940s and that they have failed to hold a bad government to account, in his words. And he's also made the point that he doesn't believe Sussan Ley, and this is critical, he's named her, is not in a position to lead the party where it needs to be led. So it's not quite calling for a spill, but it's laying out the arguments for why there needs to be. Now, the issue of when there is a spill, that is still ahead of us. What is notable, I'm told, is that there are no further moves tonight. There are no others seemingly coming out to resign. That's all for tomorrow, so we'll be watching that very, very closely. But the question, Sarah, now is there a spill and what form does it take? And it does look like Sussan Ley is resisting a rapid spill, and one of the reasons she might be doing that is to create space, potentially, for a different candidate, for someone else to come up the middle. That's a very live possibility at the moment. You know, you might have even just had one in front of your camera.
Who else would be on that list of the run-up through the middles?
You'd have to say someone like Ted O'Brien is another one. And if they're all in the mix, you know, you can sort of start extending it. But there is definitely a sense that Sussan Ley probably knows that she's going to struggle to hold on. That said, the numbers are tight, I'm told, but she recognises that her time is up. She does not want to just open the gates for Angus Taylor to romp through unchallenged. And so you do get a sense that there is positioning going on here to make life difficult and for someone else to come up, maybe as a compromise, someone who can unite the Conservatives of the party with the moderates. That's really the magic trick here for the Liberal Party. That is what makes them divided. That is what's made them look like a rabble, and it's what's made a lot of their supporters go to One Nation.
So that's a very interesting situation, Jacob. It's not quite what we thought we were looking at today with a more binary contest. I mean, it's not possible, obviously, now to say what the numbers are, but do you have any sense in the way the numbers are breaking down into the camps in the Liberal Party?
Look, all day people have been saying to me it's still quite tight. Now, Angus Taylor has finally made this move, so that suggests he's got a sense or a sniff that he can pull this off. But I have to say, on top of that, he has been essentially pushed into this position. For weeks now, we've been talking about leadership. We saw Andrew Hastie and his backers push him. The Conservatives then united around Angus Taylor. That's created a sense of momentum. And I think Angus Taylor is not particularly happy that he's had to get to this point now. The problem is in politics, you don't always get to choose the exact time when you make these moves. And you know, there is never a perfect time when you're making these big calls. He's made it. It's a very big call for him to have made.
How significant in his thinking do you think is the issue of knocking off the first female leader of the Liberal Party? That can't be without consequences.
It's very much a concern. The Liberal Party knows that if it gives the impression that it's run by blokes for blokes, particularly older blokes, they're in trouble. We saw Dave Chalmer on the story that I had earlier making that point. They also need to appeal to younger voters, Sarah. I would say, though, that that gender issue is sitting there underneath all of this. Two of the Liberals who were very, very strong in calling for Sussan Ley to step down earlier this week were women. And I'm talking about Jane Hume and Senator Henderson, both really making that argument for why her time is up.
Jacob, thank you very much indeed. Obviously, we're going to keep talking. Jacob, I'm sorry, just before I let you go, I just wanted to, just a thought flew into my mind at that moment. Is there any scenario under which Sussan Ley survives this?
It's hard to say. You wouldn't rule it out, but it's looking challenging. It's looking very, very challenging for her. She has those polls against her. She has the questions of judgment, and she's also had an awful lot of bad luck.
And do we know yet who is going to be doing numbers for Angus Taylor, doing numbers for Sussan Ley? Have those, and indeed anybody else who comes up the middle, have any of those important positions been filled and occupied yet?
There's the faceless people in all of this, Sarah. Some characters have sort of appeared in the last few days. We had some of them indeed on that story tonight. People Australians wouldn't necessarily have heard of, but this is how they make their bones in the early sort of levels of politics.
Now, Jacob, this is not your first rodeo. You've been through a large number of spills in your career. What can you tell us about the way the next 48 hours are going to unfold? Obviously, each one is different, but you've seen these stories unfold before. What do we expect?
So, an incredible amount of lobbying now takes place. What Angus Taylor now can do is actively canvass his colleagues. He can ring them up. He can say, vote for me for reasons X, Y and Z. He can't do that openly when he's in shadow cabinet, because when you're in shadow cabinet, that is an explicit endorsement of the leader. So he's freed from that. He can now go for it. And I can imagine he's already burning the phone lines now as we speak. And Sussan Ley will be doing the same, and then there will be those other players who will be positioning themselves. There's a lot of jockeying now to go for the next 24, 48 hours, and I say that without knowing when and if there will be a party room meeting, but you'd have to assume late on Thursday or early on Friday would be likely candidate times. And then the other thing that happens is there's deal making that goes on beneath the surface. Who would be Angus Taylor's running mate? Who would be the person he'd want as treasurer? Who would he want in foreign affairs? All big questions that he will be offering really to people to draw their support.
Jacob, thank you very much indeed. Talk to you soon.
See ya.
Now, we're going to cross to David Speers, because while we had Jacob locked talking to me there, David Speers has been hitting the phone. David, bring us up to date. What have you managed to garner from your phone and quick conversations in the last 20 minutes?
Well, to be honest, Sarah, right now there's a fair bit of digesting going on across the party room as to what's just happened, when exactly a party room meeting and a spill vote will take place. It is very hard to see how Sussan Ley could resist this for very long, so likely tomorrow or Friday at the latest. Jacob is right to point out to the fact that there'll be a lot of lobbying going on. These moments can be reset moments, if you like. Things have been tight on the numbers over the last couple of days, including today. But once Angus Taylor has made this move, as Jacob said, he can start hitting the phones. That could see a fresh take, if you like, over the coming hours, 24 hours, in terms of where those numbers sit. So it's game on from here as to who is going to lead this party. And the block in the middle between the moderates and the Conservatives will be critical here. There are a group of about 5 or 6 that were seen as on the fence, and that's where a lot of the attention will be applied. A lot of the pressure will be applied from both camps now.
But just to be clear, it's Sussan Ley who dictates the way this is going to unfold in a functional way from this point.
Yes, the party whips also play a role here, but Sussan Ley will have to decide that, yes, there is going to be a spill, because technically, as we've been pointing out, Angus Taylor has gone in and resigned from the front bench tonight, but not called for a spill. Others will be doing that soon, we're told, or Sussan Ley can decide to call the spill. But once that happens and a spill is agreed, and that means the party room has to gather, the whips then need to give what's called a reasonable amount of time for all MPs and senators to be there. Most of them are here in Canberra for Parliament. The Senate is in estimates. At least one is not in town, would need to return. So they will have a chance to have their vote on who should be the Liberal Party leader.
So talk to us a little bit about the jockeying, David. Are we at the stage yet when people have been already offered positions in a putative Taylor-led front bench, or does that start from now?
It appears no one has been offered a position per se, and you heard Tim Wilson talking to you a little earlier, and that's been a similar position for many Liberals, both publicly and privately, that they've not had those sorts of conversations, certainly with Angus Taylor, who's kept his cards pretty close to his chest, and increasingly so over the last 24 hours. There's also an understanding that he won't be running a ticket. That means running with a candidate for the deputy leadership. like he did with Jacinta Nampijinpa-Price after the election when he ran for the leadership with Jacinta Nampijinpa-Price as his deputy candidate. This time, it's not expected he'll do that. That means there would be a potential field of maybe 4, 5 or 6 candidates for that deputy position, but that's for the party to decide. But look, whether he'll get to the point will need to get to the point of offering jobs to people to win their votes. You can't rule that out in a decision that's this tight. But winning over those in the middle will be key, as well as, look, if the move is on, these things the tide can really turn. But right now, this has just happened and things are tight within the party.
Well, just talk about that group in the middle, if we will. We obviously saw Jane Hume come out of an interview with Sky TV this week and say some very blunt things in the corridor. First of all, Jane Hume, where does she fit into this picture? But talk to us about that group in the middle. Who are they and where do they sit now?
Well, Jane Hume is a moderate, has always been, but was very close with Angus Taylor and backed Angus Taylor in that ballot after the election. Was dropped then by Sussan Ley from the front bench and clearly has not forgotten it. Look, she's not wrong to point out that the reality of those polls that we saw, particularly this week, would have meant a wipeout for the Liberals in an entire state like Victoria, her home state. So she is seen as someone backing Angus Taylor, but from the moderate side. That's an unusual situation in the party. Most of the moderates have been sticking firmly with Sussan Ley. But then you've got that group in the middle, as I say. There's a block of about 12 that are typically unaligned with the moderates or Conservatives, but some of them have committed one way or the other. As I say, we're talking about 5 or 6 that really are now the target of the lobbying from both sides.
David, I just want to throw a question to PK, who I think is sitting with you in the room. And the question I want to ask Patricia is about the impact, you talked about it earlier, the impact of unseating the first female leader of the Liberal Party. How much damage does Angus Taylor wear for doing that? Does he need to have a female deputy to offset some of that? How much does it help the Teals? What are the consequences of that factor?
It's an excellent point, and I've spoken to Conservatives, even, Sarah, over the last week, who are very concerned about the optics in relation to that. They also have told me, because the right, the Conservative side, weren't all united behind Angus Taylor. This is a key point. Andrew Hastie was the choice of many of them. He then pulled out of that race because he didn't have enough support. And since that, there's been a lot of conversations about how Angus Taylor is received by women. And the view, even, as I say, of Conservatives, let alone the moderates, is that as they try to win votes from women, and of course they're polling with women, and of course the real poll, the election, showed women leaving them in droves, will be very much damaged by them pulling support and knifing their first female leader. Now, others say to me, this isn't just about gender. That's not fair to see it through only a gendered lens. Just like Julia Gillard once said, it's not only about gender, but it is also about gender. And I think that's a key point. It will hurt them, and there's always a transactional cost with getting rid of a leader. You can never do it with clean hands, and Angus Taylor will have to wear some of the consequences of that.
David, just the other thing I wanted to ask you about, if I could go back to David Speers for a moment, it's the question about the pull between the regions, the rural regional vote and the metropolitan seats, and the fragility of what's left of the metropolitan seats for the Liberals. So with an election lens, winning back seats enough to form government eventually, how does an Angus Taylor leadership address that issue?
Sarah, the great conundrum that the Liberal Party and the coalition has been facing is this drift, more than a drift, really, this avalanche of support that's gone from the Liberal column to the One Nation column. That has happened a lot in the regional parts of Australia, but it's that pull to the right that's creating so many of these crises for the party. Yet, at the same time, their only way back to government is winning back urban seats. They've been wiped out in urban seats over the last 2 elections by the Teals, by Labor, even the odd Green as well. So they need to find a way back into urban Australia. But the further they get pulled to the right by One Nation, the harder that becomes. So how will Angus Taylor, a Conservative in the Liberal Party, a Conservative man, as Patricia points out, how will he be able to turn around the party's fortunes to not only win back that base from One Nation, but then win back the seats they need in the cities, and particularly younger women in the cities that have deserted the Liberal Party, That's unclear on what he said tonight, but perhaps there are big ideas there that he's ready to roll out now that he's freed from that front bench position.
And just finally, back to Patricia for the final question. You know, obviously a lot can change in politics over minutes, over hours, but if this is the end of Sussan Ley's leadership, what will be the judgment of what she achieved, what she tried to achieve, where she lands?
I think that's such a fantastic question. I think it'll be a mixed report on her leadership. Many, even in the right of the party, credit her with being able to land policies and ideas, staring down the Nationals, as I've mentioned, when no other Liberal leader had. You've got to give her credit for that. She did do that. She got an agreement on shadow cabinet solidarity. She also was able, whether people like the outcome or not, to settle the net zero debate. That was incredibly difficult. She managed to do it. It's an important point to make without the moderates leaving the Liberal Party. That was a live threat for a while, Sarah, that they may do that. So she's kept the party together, but it'll be a mixed report. Some people say she didn't stand for anything, she didn't put her foot down on other issues, and that she was always waiting for the process. Now, that is the polar opposite way that Peter Dutton led. She made that her brand, and I think it's come back to bite her in some ways, because one of the biggest criticisms of her at the same time is that she wasn't a conviction politician, and conviction in politics, especially during this time of populism, is clearly a commodity.
Patricia Karvelas, David Speers, thank you both very much. And indeed, the person who walked across the screen there, thank you both very much indeed for your expertise on this very interesting night. Thank you both.